Well, hello, dear ones. I am embracing the kind of Studio 54 lighting this evening, with very bright, disco-y situation. How have you all been? Hello, hello. I'm on my own this evening again, so it's a little lower fi. The last 2 weeks, 2 Mondays, we've been going a little lower fi, and we're not in my actual bed today. We usually are, but I've been needing it to keep it to myself for a little while. It's been a week. It's been a very intense week. How has your week been going, dear ones? Welcome, welcome to the Glamour Hobo Bedtime Tales. I want you to tuck in, get yourself something delicious to drink and something soft and overdressed to wear. How can you hear me? Is everything all right out there? I don't want it to make too much noise with my giant hair. Hello, Sally. Yes, different bit of a different look tonight. I guess I'm really out of practice doing my makeup because I look like I've been punched in the face. And I'm it's just gonna have to be that way. Or like I'm being interrogated. I'm not sure. And I'm having a like Oriental tapestry moment. Hello, Johnny O Twitch. Did you ever get the thing I sent you? Did you get your Prezi for being a Patreon for April? In the mail? The physical snail mail? Hello, Todd. I feel like I just saw you. So I hope you've got your nightcaps on. I have. And interrogation room lighting for sure. That's just where we're at. That's just where we're at. It's a mood. So tell me, how's your week been going? Please drop it in the chats. Oh, good, you got the thing I sent you. Hooray! Um, for my patrons, I've started doing digital postcards as well on my Patreon because I send things in the mail, but I would say like 20% of the people who are patrons of mine do not get things that I send them. Their mail carrier hates them, or they've been swallowed by the void because it was so charming. So anyways, I started doing digital postcards in addition to the things that I send, just in case. So Reverend is Jesus, seriously? Can I please have a cinnamon roll? I'd like that. I would love that. All right, we're gonna get reading. Today's tea is in one of my favorite mugs because this mug has a hat. Right? Get yourself a mug with a hat. All right, weigh in. Are we going to keep going with space opera? Or are we going to flit our way back to Hitchhiker's Guide? It's up to you, you the people. Shout, let your will be known. This week, I had a lot of adventure this week, which was great. I needed it very much for my Glamour Hobo soul. And just lots of excavation. It's a new moon tonight and tomorrow. Happy new moon in Taurus. The Doctor of Desire. Hello, space opera. Looks like space opera is the winner. All right. This lighting is so horrid today. I just like, it was me. I read the science fiction on the internets. I admit it. I am that glamour hobo. All right. It just gets worse and worse. This is what I get for being lazy. Back to Studio 54. All right. All right. All right, darlings. Let's move this hair situation. It's trying to take over. It's going to secede and start its own planet. I'm sure of it. All right, space opera. Da, 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 da. I will say, even though we're not in my bed, this blanket is from my bed. So there's a bit of it. There's a bit of it. All right. Space Opera by Catherynne Valente. We had just learned the rules of the song contest. And yes, and the last thing that was very, very exciting to the drama of the contest is number 20. If a performer fails to show up on the night, they shall be automatically disqualified, ranked last, and their share of communal galactic resources forfeited for a year. Do try not to actually kill anyone. It's a dreadful bother to clean up the mess. So that's where we are. So that'll give you an idea of the drama that is yet to unfold once Decibel Jones gets to the contest. All right, number 7. Miracles are happening from time to time. Oh, I should mention, all of the chapter titles in this book are actual songs that have been performed at the Eurovision Song Contest over its history. That is how nerdy Catherynne Valente is about the Eurovision Song Contest. Ahem. The watery drop of light that had been busy swelling at the tip of the Esca's proboscis reached critical mass. It plopped onto the filthy floor of Decibel Jones' flat. It splashed as it hit the carpet, and the splashing light formed itself into an image, a projection, alive with intention. As he watched, an army of musical notes and scales and flats and sharps danced and whirled over a photographical neon watercolor of the Bataclic sonic swamps and the occasional mountains of Kaj that were valleys in winter and Himalaya-crushing peaks at the height of summer. Decibel Jones knew those notes. He'd know them anywhere. They were Raggedy Dandy, which was, just maybe, the only really good song he'd ever written. The conversation between Decibel Jones and the Roadrunner bore almost no resemblance to the global template. It was mostly sung rather than spoken word, for one thing, and involved an extended dance sequence and a bit with a cat. Is that really it? Des interrupted halfway through. We just sing better than one other beastie and we get to live. Yes. Does it seem barbaric to you? 67% of your population used that word. No, it makes sense to me. It's perfect. Why? Decibel Jones shrugged. Life is stupid and beautiful that way. The Esca smiled, for the Esca can and do smile, all its feathers flushed an excited shade of cobalt. He had said something good then. Somehow the world's luckiest fuck-up had done something right for once, though God and all his angels knew what. He'd only said what he meant, which was, when you thought about it, a minor superpower because so few people ever did. The blue creature danced coquettishly toward him on those impossible dumb legs that couldn't hold up a plastic garden flamingo, let alone this living, breathing version. 300 light years from here, there is a small world called Bataclic, flying through the black, as blue as this world and as dear. It is my world. It is where the antique Esca first opened their eyes and looked up into the sky filled with the mutation-nurturing warmth of a single white star, burning as if for us alone, looked out beyond the bracelet of our 20 mountainous moons into the all-possible cosmos, and first pondered whether to save some seeds and berries against the possibility of a lean and hungry winter, rather than devour them all at once. Do you know what your people call that sun that gives my people life? No, said Jones. You call it Mira Wonderful Star. I knew somebody called that once. I am aware, Mr. Jones. Sure you're not after her? I'll warn you, she's tough to get a hold of these days. Decibel stared out his grimy window. She could have done your job, no problem. Save the world with a song? Just give her a minute to tune up. I'm just Mr. Elmer of the Fudd. Not even that. The roadrunner crossed the little garret room, leaving wet, mandala-moldering footprints on the scuffed carpet. It bent its enormous head and brushed the tip of its lantern against Dess's forehead. It felt like a kiss. It felt like every kiss anyone had ever laid on anyone else, the good, the bad, and the all-time great, the let's just be friends. All those kisses, all those mouths, all those feelings electrified and painted blue. Des didn't know what he did it, why he did it, or even honestly how. It had been years since this sort of thing had been a prominent water feature in the courtyard of his life. It had been years since it was how he made friends and self-medicated and got inspired and entertained himself and borrowed a cup of confidence from friendly neighbors. It had been years since he'd felt himself enough to try. He put a hand on the roadrunner's thin, jeweled, holy ribcage, and the hand was welcome there. I'm not sure I know this song, he whispered. How does it go? By the time the rest of the world was finishing its exposition, an exhausted Decibel Jones had agreed to it all, to go to the stars and sing for his species, to follow what wascally Webbit confessed his sins, called out for breakfast, and become entirely, unbeknownst to him, resoundingly and inexplicably, though not by any human definition, pregnant. Point to Donnie. And that is how you have sex with an alien. All right, next section. It's called Water. The house is full of children. The relatives have come. I am going to put on my green dress. That is a lyric from Party for Everybody by Buranovsky Babushki, which I think is the grandmother group from Eurovision a few years back, who actually did this whole mime about baking cookies and wearing traditional Ukrainian dress. There were a bunch of old ladies. I think. I'm just saying. I'm still just horrified by this lighting. Oh God, that's so much worse. I can do that. I can get behind that. All right. Boop. All right, darlings. Let us proceed. A little bit of thigh action for you. White and Black Blues. Decibel Jones was already well on his way, but not to the Metagalactic Grand Prix. To Whitehall. The instant the hungriest unpaid intern shadowing the lowest-ranking secretary to the most unremarkable member of Parliament saw that the only living name on the aliens pop chart was a British subject, a nondescript black car carrying two nondescript men in black suits and black sunglasses spontaneously materialized out of a zebra crossing halfway to Croydon. Unfortunately, the trod-upon intern was merely quick, not alone. Thus, just as Des and the Roadrunner were arguing the merits of Richard Harris's version of MacArthur Park vis-a-vis Donna Summers, a veritable unkindness of nondescript black cars descended furiously onto the pavement outside. A flock of fists pummeled the door and rang the buzzer. A gaggle of angry men's voices squawked out, "Dennis Jallow! Dennis Jallow! This is inserted steely-eyed organization here. It is imperative that we speak with you immediately." A murder of identically loafered feet kicked the door down and marched up the rickety staircase. And by the time Decibel Jones thought to wonder where the Esca had gone all of a sudden, he was crowd surfing back down the walk-up staircase on a chattering brood of government shoulders. But the flight of the G-men broke apart when they hit their wall of parked cars. One after the other, square-jawed men born with surnames like Brown, Davies, Evans, Taylor, and Price, and given names like Mr., Officer, Agent, Lieutenant, and Specialist, pecked and flapped at him. They took turns grabbing Decibel's McQueen-sheathed elbow with extravagantly aggressive masculinity and attempting to assert their dominance using only biceps, baritones, and a genetic inability to remove their sunglasses. "Watch the Swarovskis, boys," Des protested. "Damage this little number and I'll drop a whole fucking tax bracket." "Mr. Jallow, I'm MI5, and you'll need to come with me at once." "MI6, Mr. Jallow, and this is my jurisdiction, Evans, so fuck off. Overseas intelligence. Very, very overseas, I should say." "The intelligence may be foreign, but Dinesh here is quite domestic, Taylor, which is MI5's territory, so it's you who'll be fucking off, I'm afraid. Better luck's next invasion." "Now, Danny, my lad, don't let these two confuse you. Metropolitan Police Anti-Terrorism Squad, at your service. Get in the car. There's a good fellow." "Stand down, Davies. You're relieved. You can all stand down. Downing Street calling, Mr. Jallow. The Prime Minister wants you." "Well, I can't say I haven't given it the occasional thought. The PM's a bit of an all right," Des managed to quip. If he lost everything else, pride, priapism, and producer credit, Decibel Jones would never, never give up his swagger. "That's enough of that, sir. Now I'll bring you to Cobra to meet the emergency committee, of which the Prime Minister is chair, so there must be some manner of mix-up, but it'll all sort out at Whitehall. Son, I'm your liaison from the United Nations. It's imperative that I take you into protective custody. This clearly isn't a UK op, you asshats. Go have a cup of tea or whatever it is you do while the big boys are talking. The Foreign and Commonwealth Office kindly invites you to eat shit, Yank. He is ours and you know it. Well, we'll let you know if anybody descends from the heavens asking for Taylor Swift, won't we, lads?" The cause of authoritarian brood started coming thicker and faster until Decibel felt vomit rising again. He knew better than to struggle when in the grip of bureaucracy, but he couldn't breathe. The smell of dry-cleaned blazers and recently signed in triplicate forms was overpowering. Where was a bloody damned giant space flamingo when you needed one? "SAS, Jallow, on your feet, look lively, fall in. Home Office, Danish, come along now. UKSA, so you'll want to follow me. GCHQ, Mr. J, on you get. OAA, Dan. Let's get a move on, shall we?" "Wait, what the hell's an OAA?" yelled the Prime Minister's secretary from the back of the rookery. "Office of Alien Affairs. We're new." The OAA agent checked his watch. "In 2.5 minutes, it'll be 90-minute anniversary of our founding." "Daily Mail, Des, let's get you away from these jolly jackboots and down to the newsroom on the double quick. The people have a right to know what kind of person is going to represent them. Now, be honest, mate. Don't you think the first UK ambassador to another world ought to be a bit more, I don't know, English?" Decibel Jones yanked his over-mistered arm out of the reporter's skinny talons. Oh, go eat an entire bucket of cog. Beg your pardon, Mr. Jones. I'm a great fan of your work. By the way, really, I've set my employer's ring to terms of service for years. I've been charged by the Queen to convey you directly to Her Majesty's audience room. I believe you'll find that the head of state trumps these earnest chaps any way you look at it. Right this way, sir. Boop. Just gonna drop that on there. Tommy, you're fucking killing me. If you're not gonna share with the class. All right. Decibel Jones sighed and shook his head. Today was fired. Today was well and truly sacked. Today could, in point of fact, fuck all the way off. Well, Terms of Service is just about the only song on the album I didn't write, so what a fantastic job you've done with your sucking up. Full marks. There were too many of them. Decibel pinballed through the parliament of men in black from manful grip to manful grip until he just toppled into a car the way he used to when his manager had to beat off a gauntlet of handsy fans to get him to his next gig. They were screeching down the road in reverse before he even figured out what car had gotten him in the end. The glitter-punk glam rock messiah peered across the shadowy expanse of the official vehicle of Decibel Jones' grand tour of government agencies. It was a kind of munted limousine with a cavernous rear arranged so that two passengers' benches faced each other. Four oversized, oddly insectoid sunglasses lenses reflected the sunlight flitting through the tinted windows. Afternoon, gents, Des said, and hoped to Christ his voice wasn't actually shaking as much as it felt it was. Silence. Cool, unfeeling, taxpayer-funded silence. That arse from the Daily Mail had a point, Mr. Price, one of the mystery men said finally. Indeed he did, Mr. Brown, the other said with a nod. It's quite a little bit of an egg in the face of the Commonwealth. One of the three of them, he's the only one actually born here, and he's what? Pakistani Nigerian on his dad's side and Welsh Swedish on his matrilineal? How does it even get past the first date? The girl was some sort of Japanese Franco-Jewish muddle from Dublin by way of sodding Warsaw, but I gather she's out of the picture. And the other chap is, God of all the angels save us, a refugee Turk. Of course, it's unclear whether they actually want his backing band, but I can't imagine they crossed the void of space on the strength of his solo album. Why our new friends couldn't have opted for a nice English band instead of this porridge of regrettably issued work visas, I'll never understand. We are English, you tit, Decibel Jones said with a sigh, glancing at his fingernails, which were much in need of filing. He was used to this sort of thing. He was used to this sort of thing by the time he was 12. He'd always had the kind of face that made people squint and try to think of a polite way to say, just what exactly are you, kid? As though he might legitimately answer rhinoceros or sea cow or Aldebaran. And that bit of genetic luck had saved him more than once. If they couldn't tell, they couldn't bring themselves to do anything about it. Usually. So was my Nan, if you want to have a squabble about it. Not that that stopped you lot. Some might say we were a pretty nice spread of humanity between the three of us. Two now, but still covering a lot of territory. Rather ideal, if you ask me. His escorts continued to ignore him. He was used to that too. 10 million teenagers once screamed your name never meant one piddly thing to the authorities when you dressed like he did. It's certainly not a good look on us. Is he gay as well? Good Lord. I am sitting right here, Decibel Jones said. Mr. Brown flipped through a folder on the seat next to him and continued on as though Decibel Jones were no more than a cup holder. It's a bit unclear, but that's the youth of these days. There's been an odd paternity suit, but none that panned out. The three of them were always a bit suspect, if you ask me. All musicians are. Jones did say he was an equal opportunity bisexual in an interview right after Space Crumpet hit, but his female fans got their feathers ruffled. Or rather, their parents did. At which point he said he was omnisexual, whatever that means, and then he said to have made up a lot of words that give me a right headache. What in the blazes is a boy frack, other than the insult to the language? Omnisexual. I'm here for it. Ort Saint Ultraviolet shook loose all my combustibles, Des answered with one gentle smile of having lost something wonderful. He picked at a loose stitch in the leather of the door handle, and every time we touched, it was an endless earthquake in a faultless land. Mr. Price gave him a disgusted look, which was impressive given that his eyes were still invisible behind dark glasses. Correctly deployed, a curled lip can communicate entire essays on the effect of moral turpitude. At least Mr. Cattisclan has married to someone the name of Justine in Cardiff with 2 kids. I don't see where you get off fretting about whether or not the end of the world is family-friendly. Do you really think the giant singing space aliens care? Every minute you spend sniffing around bedrooms past is a minute I'm not writing the song that saves the species, you know. The words went all sour in Dus's mouth, and for the first time in his life, he started to feel the black adrenaline of stage fright coming on. It was an old arrogance, one that still fit him around the shoulders, but was far too tight in the middle. He hadn't written a new song in 4 or 5 years at least, and it hadn't been a good one then. This was a joke, a very unfunny joke, and whether he was the setup or the punchline, he'd no idea. Humanity was doomed. At least the men in black deigned to speak directly to him. Obviously, we have a team of the best songwriters working round the clock to create a winning track for you, so don't worry about that. Des stared resentfully out the window at the passing lampposts. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought they wanted us. Can't leave this sort of thing to people who thought Ultraponts would be a smash, can we? You'll also be outfitted with the latest in audiovisual recording equipment. The emergency committee will run down the most important data to acquire, particularly in terms of propulsion, ship design, weaponry, cultural intel in terms of what that might tell us about their tactical predilections once you arrive at Litost, which is, what price? 65 odd, 100 odd light years away? Yes. In the Eagle Nebula, we think. Now, unfortunately, we don't actually have any way of transmitting information at that distance, so unless you can sort out how they do it, it'll be recorded and retrieved when you return. That is entirely unnecessary, said a new voice. Decibel Jones turned his head toward it, and his mind was genuinely delighted to see the Roadrunner, or at least its projection, suddenly sitting calmly next to him in the back of the car. His body, however, reverted instantly to the primeval instinct to escape predators by jumping out of a closed, shatterproof window into traffic. He bounced off it and back into his seat, trying halfway through to look cool doing it, and failed profoundly. The Esca's proboscis lantern was cramped by the low roof, It did not seem bothered. The alien spoke in the voice of Her Majesty Queen Charlotte I, having skimmed the mind of Mr. Brown and Mr. Price, and found that an abject longing to have lived at a time when being in service to a monarch granted near a great deal more leeway in the pummeling of peasants department. The Grand Prix is the most watched event in the galaxy. More popular even than Live from Aluno, it's an exceedingly censored comedy night. And the Yurtmac present Super Murder Derby 9000. It will be broadcast throughout the galaxy from the moment the human hopefuls land on Litost. The agents glanced at one another, which was the only expression of shock and horror at the sudden appearance of an alien in their car that their training allowed. Ma'am, Mr. Brown began automatically, though the Queen was quite clearly not present. I really don't see why we don't get a say in all of this. Mightn't we have an audition process of some sort, or at least present you with a more contemporary list of our own favorites? I quite like the new parental guidance album. Have you heard of them? Real spit and shine boys, British boys. We could be proud to have those lads stand up for England, for the planet. Really, how are we meant to put gender splat on a person's intake form? The Eska turned an oceanic gaze on Decibel Jones. We presumed it meant he was like us. The Eska possess 4 genders, male, female, fugue, and clef. The male inseminates the eggs of the female. The fugue then ingests the eggs and provides nutrients over a period of gestation. And the clef prepares the birthing grotto by producing a genetic bath of virile fluid, song, and information-rich light generated by its kuma. The creature raised those large, gentle eyes to the lantern hanging from its head by a ribbon of glassy flesh. At which point the infant offspring explode rather forcefully from the flute cage of the fugue and complete their development immersed in the aforementioned multisensory broth. It's rather beautiful, even if the fugue does not generally survive. I myself am clef and took gender splat to mean Mr. Jones was also. Is that not correct, Mr. Jones? Close enough, darling, Des replied, shrugging, unable to beat back a deeply inappropriate bout of laughter. What's the pronoun on that? You do not have the embouchure to pronounce it. More's the pity. You may use she for your convenience, as it contains both your limited binary terms. It is inaccurate, but English leaves us few options, as it implies an inanimate object, which we are not, though you may be. That is, of course, the question at hand. Regardless, your input is neither needed, wanted, valued, nor at all welcome, gentlemen. The Queen's voice said out of the beak of the blue lantern bird. You may not believe it, but we are helping you. You are terribly lucky. Another chaperone species might have actually let you audition your own performers. But the Eska are sensitive to the needs of lesser worlds, having only recently earned our place among the great ones. We have chosen. We have given you an advantage you may not deserve. Our ship awaits, impatiently. Wait, Decibel Jones said with a sudden frantic horror. Parental guidance isn't so bad, really. At least they churn out albums every year. At least they're dependable. I'm... He looked pleadingly into the eyes of the weird blue future, and even he had no idea whether he was pleading to be excused or to be told he was everything the world had ever needed. His voice dropped to a whisper. You have to know I'm a has-been. If I'm even that. I barely was, really. I'm the coyote. I make the most magnificent contraptions, and I always think this time, everyone will see how good I really am, but they only ever burn me up and leave me starving to death." The Roadrunner nodded kindly. "Mr. Jones, would it help if I told you that somewhere out there, so far away, that if you left today, your great-great-grandchildren would die before they ever got to try the sandwiches at the first available fuel depot, on a world of lava and oceans of acid orbiting a double star? There is a crystal balloon filled with intelligent gas named Ursula, who knows all the words to Raggedy Dandy." Decibel Jones' matinee eyes went soft and round. He grinned. "It does, actually." "I'm gratified." Mr. Price and Mr. Brown were not finished. "This is rank madness, Mom. Begging your pardon, but you say we've got to sing better than some lizard person from Planet X or we'll be destroyed. Fine. You say we've got no choice. Fine. But we are all human beings. We all stand to get blown to bits if this boy doesn't pull it off." I need my band, though," Decibel said softly. He put his hand on the Roadrunner's spindly knee. His fingers slipped through the projection and onto the black leather seat beneath. He stared at it for a bit, feeling strongly as though he had his fill of oddity for the moment, and knowing there was only more to come in the pudding. What's left of it, anyways? It's no good without Ort. And Robert. Fuck, I left Robert. Everything happened so fast. You've got to get him back for me. The whole thing's off. We would never book Decibel Jones without the zeros. As I've said, we aren't monsters. The Roadrunner assured him. "I am afraid, however, that forgetting your coat does not constitute an emergency. Every world has coats. You will survive." "We are representatives of Her Majesty's government and the office of the Prime Minister and Homo sapiens sapiens, goddammit!" spluttered the agents, half out of their seats though the car was still hurtling along. "We should be allowed to choose our own representatives, our own warriors." "I'm sorry, dear boys, but this is not a war. It is not about you, nor are you any part of it. Every child of the galaxy learns the truth about politics at their mother's proboscis. For lo, does not Goggenyor's third unkillable fact tell us? Though any species on any dumb gob world may develop sentience, the poor bastards, no government ever does. Think on it, Mr. Brown, Mr. Price." Only meters from Whitehall Car Park, Decibel Jones and the Roadrunner dissolved into a very pretty swirl of magenta steam that smelled largely of fish and disdain. Chapter 9. What's funny is that in the ongoing drama of this light being terrible and me looking sweaty is that I am wearing a silk robe and it is so slippery that I'm literally slipping down the couch. I'm literally just, oh, what a mess. Oh, goodness. All right, darlings. All right. Vanity out the window. That's better. Oh, goodness. I told you I've been having a week. Got one more chapter, and then we're done. I'm losing a layer. Just gonna have to deal with it. All right. What is this week? So strange, so incredibly, incredibly odd. beautiful, wonderful, and are just so fucking strange. Highs and lows. And I just realized that I am dressed like an Eska. I am your blue flamingo of the evening. All right. Fucking hair. All right, darlings. Thank you for being here. Sorry, not sorry. I'm a bit of a mess. Next week, I believe is week 12, week 13 of this. I'll be back in my bedroom, probably. And then we might take a bit of a break. This week, I am on a bit of a retreat. The house that I live in is fully empty except for my own human self, which is really wonderful for me to get work done. And so that means season 3 of the Glamour Hobo podcast is going to launch. And I've got projects, and continued work on finding a new home in either Philly or Baltimore. So again, it's good to have you here. It's good to read a story. So let us wrap, shall we? Chapter 9. Diamond of Night. Oh wait, I have to hydrate. I didn't take an allergy pill this morning. That was my first mistake. Ugh. My hair is so long that it constantly gets trapped in things. Can't sleep, can't sit. That's why it's usually up. All right. Yes, I don't know what alone in a house is like either. So this is a very different situation than usual. The house is never empty. Never. There's always a kid or a cat or a chicken or a person coming through. Like the house is never empty. And so it is very special. The house gets to rest. And I get to rest with it. When we finish here, we're going to raid a channel that another Not21 friend is currently on. So we are gonna give Shoshi some love. I know Shoshi. Stayed with her when I was in LA. I've hung out with her in New Zealand. I've hung out with her on a ship in Philadelphia. Shoshi and I go way back. All right, number 9. And then we'll go raid. Diamond of Night. The first metagalactic Grand Prix was held on the hot, vast, dark planet of Sagrada, homeworld of the Elikon, the oldest functioning civilization in the galaxy. They were ancient already when the first Alunazar and the great idea of opposable nubs. They were yelling at gravity to get off their lawn when the Keshet were nothing but a twinkle in the space-time continuum's eyes. In their smug middle age, they saw the fall of the great empire of the Itrige, who started the whole trend of rings around planets, just so they could remember where they parked. And in the face of their glory, the Elikon yawned. Sagrada was chosen for the Grand Prix because, despite the Elikon's mind-smearingly advanced military, they had stayed neutral in the Sentience Wars, as they did in all wars. If they could possibly manage it, without looking like a bunch of Trustafarian art school seniors who weren't even going to bother with the group gallery show just because, you know, the system, man. As Musmar the Night Manager, the greatest of all Elikon rulers, wrote in his autobiography, "Who Moved My Invincible Doomsday Device?" neutrality was always a much more delicate operation than war or peace. Neutrality without a respectable bulge of firepower in your pocket was as good as telling the universe, I am a helpless, vulnerable, fuzzy baby with a wet pink nose. Please annihilate me at your earliest convenience. But declaring neutrality from beneath an elaborate pillow fort of prosperity, military dominance, and a diverse entertainment industry made you look as enticing to all your post-war neighbors as a rich kid's lunch money. After all, it's always the fancy house that keeps the lights off and won't shell out for candy that's first pillaged on Halloween. You might think that Musma, the night manager, could not possibly have known about the regional human holiday known as Halloween, but by one of those many curious coincidences that comprise the only real evidence for a divine and wobbling hand in the design of the universe, some variant of Halloween is celebrated by every sentient species in the galaxy. There is, it would appear, something about the achievement of sentience that immediately fills the afflicted with the longing to become something else. Something brighter, something wilder and more fearsome and morbid and covered in felt and glue and glitter, to escape into the mask of some other impossible life, and to afterward consume vast quantities of sweets. This carefully balanced neutrality was the second most significant factor in the longevity of their society. The first was Sagrada itself. If you look up into the night sky, you will not see Sagrada. Not from Earth, not from Bataclic, not even from Gak-Gak, Sagrada's largest and most socially toxic moon. The planet reflects almost none of the already miserly light of its shriveled, demented red sun. Rather, it greedily absorbs every photon until its surface shimmers with heat. That surface is wholly, utterly, indescribably black, from pole to pole, peak to peak, sea to shallowed sea. It is far blacker than coal or petroleum, or the heart of a high school poet. Far blacker than a mere total absence of light, it is surrounded by a mob of moons made of the same swarthy stuff, which block out starlight like bouncers in the hottest club in town. Sagrada is a study in darkness, an adoringly monogamous commitment to the Gothic aesthetic. Besides Sagrada, ravens are as bright as parrots, widows are as flamboyant as cabaret dancers, and black holes suffer from cripplingly penumbra envy. For obvious reasons, in Alakish, the word black and all its synonyms occupy the same linguistic niche as words like cool, sweet, brilliant, highly skilled, built like a brick shithouse. In order to function in all this dimly red-rimmed darkness, the body of an Alak is small, dense, nearly indestructible by anything that might be laying around, about, or in wait in the shadows, and mostly eyeballs. It is particularly melancholy child stacked a huge black ball of hard suet on top of a dainty black suet cone, gave it a lot of elegantly styled coaxial cable for hair, and stuck two enormous old-fashioned light bulbs on it where eyes should generally go. They'd have a pretty solid approximation of an Alak with which to horrify their parents. And yet, the Elakon are widely considered to be beautiful people. Their eyes quickly evolved to occupy nearly all their facial real estate, the better to devour any available light like starving beckers. Their long, long lashes are powerful sensory organs like cats' whiskers. If cats could sense predators, weather systems, and other annoyances miles away. The hard, slightly greasy suet of their flesh is remarkably malleable, able to imitate a wide variety of limbs and other convenient protrusions. Imagine Sagrada in its earliest pastoral days, the Elikon and their black villages, peacefully tilling black fields of midnight barley in the shadows of onyx mountains, carrying their tiny charcoal children to dig black clams from the black beach near a black sea, looking up into a sky so dark that it depressed itself. When the first alien starships cruised through their atmosphere and dumped a cargo hold full of state secrets onto their planet. The Elikon were able to advance technologically at a rate far faster than any other species due to date because the rest of the galaxy used Sagrada as its personal high-end rubbish bin. What better place to hide something you didn't want anyone else to find than a planet so dark that it's practically invisible? The heavens rained down data crystals, prototype vessels, unwanted furniture, spent weapons, drugs, bodies, treaties, vast sums of intergalactic currency, more data crystals, and any commodities a governing body might want to remove from the market in order to create a sudden and profitable demand. Civilizations rose and fell and ran smack into walls, but the Elikon went on, collecting, analyzing, improving, remembering. In fact, in every language other than Elakish, the word for the massively useful black world Sagrada translate to memory bin, and to leave something there was to have it binned. After happily using everyone else's dirty little secrets to establish dominance over their sector and a continuous lively civilization whose general tranquility Musmar the Night Manager famously attributed to the fact that light is a well-known irritant to all thinking, feeling beings, the Elikon made the rather unexpected choice not to tell everyone to shove off and stop using their world as a collective toilet down which to flush any incriminating evidence the second the police came knocking. Instead, they became the great archivers and curators of galactic culture, hyper-attentive beatnik librarian salvagers, combing every black inch of Sagrada for debris to analyze, label, and include in climate-controlled exhibits in the long, hexagonal black granite halls of the Melanoa Trementis Library. Melanoa Trementis. Melanoa Trementis? I have no idea what this word is. Blame Catherynne Valente. A palace of knowledge as large as Hungary, as well organized as a retirement home for executive assistants, and as well guarded as the meaning of life. The first Metagalactic Grand Prix was held in the Melanotromentis Library's special collections room, as it contained the only stage with any real size or grandeur left standing after the war, and afterward the whole thing could be immediately and efficiently binned, a word which had come over the millennia to mean, quote, carefully removing, carefully, lovingly recorded for posterity by the Elikon and preserved against the ravages of time, war, and the children's disrespect for history, unquote. The winner of the first Grand Prix was the Alunazar ultra-tenor girl group called Glagol Jism and the Death of All That Came Before, singing what would become the first interstellar smash single, Maybe We'll Just Stay In Tonight instead of doing the whole intergalactic civil war thing. Wouldn't that be nice? 5 massive tubular sea squirts, protean tubes of golden and violet and scarlet veined flesh with a round cilia-fringed siphon at each end that served as a mouth, nose, face, cyclopean eye, and simple jet propulsion system, undulated with passion. Their siphons, gaping with grief and ecstasy, hovered in the air above the weeping crowd, suspended in an orb of moonlit water, rescued at the last possible second from their ruined homeworld. Naturally, it wasn't just the 5 of them. The Alanuzars are the greatest practitioners of attachment parenting in the known universe. When an Alanuzar reproduces, their children do not go out into the world to make their fortune and curse the urban dating scene, but simply bud from their mother and father, emerging out of their backs or their bellies as a complete individual and rebellious bulge, but never leaving home. Each Alanuzar is a colony, a generational ship, accumulated centuries of wisdoms and experience and quick tempers and belligerent dinner conversations in one extremely lumpy, extremely lovely tube of glowing aquatic flesh. The death of a single Alanuzar is the death of an entire nation, and the wars had gone on for years. Glagol Jism and the death of all that came before sang in the perfect bone-shattering 5,000-part harmony with the combined voices of their entire genetic lines, and they wept the rosy pink electricity generated by 5,000 weaponized agony ducts, and they performed the traditional Alanuzar interdimensional two-step, which no foreigner had been allowed to witness before that moment in the Black Library, a dance halfway between Bollywood and SeaWorld, lit only by the bioluminescent fire of their tears and the transported moonlight of the poor, far-off, still smoldering Alunu Prime. At the climax of the dance, there was a brilliant iridescent spiderweb of exploding light, and Glagol Jism phased into an dimension where the whole notion of sentience had never gotten past committee, wriggled with delight, made a salacious gesture in the general direction she'd come from, and never came back. They won by a single point. And that's it for this week, my loves. I hear we're going on a raid. It's been my pleasure and my privilege, as always, to be here with you on Mondays. Thank you for being patient with my mess of a self today. Please enjoy the ridiculousness of my hair being down. It's good to see you. It's good to be seen. So tell us where we're going, Reverend Tommy, in the comments. And I'll see you next week.